Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bash Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. I appreciate all the love and support. It's still Social Work Month. Happy Social Work Month to everybody who's watching or listening. Happy Women's Month to all the ladies out there. Hope you're having a great month so far. Every month is Women's Month. Every month is Social Work Month because we out here killing it in these social work streets. So keep up the great work. I'm proud of all the social workers, mental health professionals out there doing the amazing work. Some people call it God's work. So we out here. Follow the podcast on all social media outlets at the Social Work Rants podcast on Instagram, at Social Work Rants on Twitter, X, whatever Elon wants to call it this week, and on Facebook. Type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that like button, and of course the YouTube, hit that red subscribe button. We're gonna do something a little different. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you know I like to think outside the box and educate our fellow social workers, especially coming off the heels of last fall's social work wealth conference that was so successful. And there's a new social work wealth conference coming up later this year. And from the Millennial Social Work Conference, so many people talking about money and their businesses and stuff. So we need to talk about finances in our work and ways to get money and additional income and all that. And my guest wrote this amazing book, Mind Your Money. And if you don't have this book, this will totally help you to get started with your finances. I read this book. I was like, wow, I wish I had this book. It's so relatable. So much gems and info and just easy to read. It's not financial jargon that you see on MSNBC or all these news outlets and Jim Cramer, all this stuff, or even there's a YouTube scammers that been talking about finances. So this is the real deal, real honest, raw. Yanely Espinal, the author of the book. How you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I feel like this is a topic that it relates to like every area. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, like money and financial literacy, it connects to everything. You know, everybody who works for a paycheck needs to have some financial literacy. So I'm ready to talk about it.
No, absolutely. You just got off touching the stage in Cincinnati for a wealth conference. Tell about that conference and talk about what a little bit what you spoke at the conference.
Yeah, so like a couple of years ago, I had started like looking into wealth building and like investing and just learning about all of this stuff that I don't know, me personally, I didn't know anybody who knew about investments or stock market or anything like that. So I had paid off like $20,000 of debt. And so I decided I wanted to take the next step and start investing. And so I came across the FIRE community, Financial Independence Retire Early. It's like a movement of people who want to get to retirement as fast as possible. They don't want to wait till they turn 65 years old in order to then retire, right? So they basically pay off all their debt as fast as they can, and then they increase their savings rate as much as possible. If they could save 50% or 60, 70% of everything that they make, then they could retire in like 15 years or in 10 years. And some people even retire in 5 years. By really, really getting like seriously on a tight budget and increasing their income, taking side hustles, starting a business. Just the more money you bring in, the faster you can reach your goal. But then a lot of people started criticizing it, like, oh, retire early, and then you're just gonna be depressed. You're going, all your friends are working, so what you gonna do? You know, like you get lonely, you get bored, you don't have a meaning to your life. You wake up every day, you're like, I'm not doing anything. You know, yeah, I used to go to work, I used to have work friends, and like then see my family at night and weekends. But your days are long, and you don't have any activities to fill it up with. So the research shows that 1 out of 3 people that retire early are facing depression. So they basically said, you know what, let's make this a healthier community, because if we keep focusing on the retire early part, people won't realize the benefits that come with the FI part, which is the financial independence part. You don't need to retire early, but you could still reach financial independence
Right.
And then you could decide what you want to do, and you don't have to take a crappy job that you don't like just because you're desperate for a paycheck.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of has gotten shortened from FIRE to FI, which is the FI community, or FI community and financial independence. So a whole conference was created to bring together everybody that's trying to pursue financial independence or even just curious about it. And that conference is called Economy, but instead of a Y at the end, it's spelled with an E at the end. So it's like econo and then the word me. And then, yeah, it's like 200, 300, 400 people. This year there was 400 people there, and I got a chance to speak on stage about financial literacy and why it needs to be taught in every single high school.
Yeah, absolutely. Here in Delaware, we totally need that in like the worst way. And there's some business classes. I know each of my two kids. I got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Mhm.
They've been taking some business classes, but definitely like the financial literacy. They know like the last 4 years since COVID happened, I've been trying to be on my financial gain and
Yeah,
with books and books like yours and just like
yeah,
constantly reading or YouTube stuff and like
yep,
and all this, just try to think about their future and think about like leaving a legacy like for them
yeah,
and writing a will and just
yes,
COVID
all the
happened.
different
So
pieces.
I might not make it. I mean, write this will, and then when I moved, 2020, becoming a first gen homeowner and moving out of New York and that whole bit. So it's
Yeah.
uh,
There's so
a lot.
many parts to it. That's, I think it can be overwhelming for so many people because you start looking at it, you're like, there's so many different aspects to it, like where you bank and like, do you want to buy a house and like investments and retirement and taxes and insurance and a will and then you get overwhelmed. So for me, like, I think it's very important to just start with the basics first. Don't worry about the advanced stuff until you feel really good about the basics. And little by little, you just add a new topic when you're ready for the next step. But if you try to do everything all at once, you're not gonna get nothing done but stressing yourself out.
What is the basics and come up from social workers. We many of us work in nonprofits. So many of us have our own private practices and dealing with taxes and all that good stuff, dealing with insurances. But what are the basics in order to try to okay? I start a job and I'll get all this benefit package,
Right.
with 401k, oh, we might match and all this other stuff that come there. What the heck all that means? How do you get
Yeah.
started?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize when you get your benefits at work, every single one of those different benefits, your health plan, your vision plan, your dental plan, and life insurance policy, your investment plan, if it's a 403B, if you work at a nonprofit, if it is a 401k, if you work at a private company. And so I think people don't realize each one of those is a contract that your job has with the company. So let's say, for example, your 403B is with a company called Vanguard. Your job hired Vanguard to provide the job, their employer, with a service, which is to give their employees, all the workers, a 403B plan. So because they are hired, you're a customer. Your job, you, your employer, and you as the employee, you are a customer, a paying customer to that company, that Vanguard. So they got to take care of you. So I think everybody needs to take advantage of the phone number and the email of that plan that you have. Call them because they work for you. Like, call up the number in your 403B plan and ask them every question you have. Like, okay, it says right here that it's a percentage match. What does that mean? And then they'll explain it to you. Oh, it means if you put in $1, your company will put in another 50 cents if it's a 50% match. So half of what you put, they'll put it. And then it's capped at a certain amount. So let's say it's a 50% match up to 3% of your salary. Okay, well, then you're gonna have to figure out what's your salary, what's 3% of your salary, and then say, okay, up to half of that. So for me, it's like people don't take advantage of those contacts. Like, they work for your company. You should take advantage of them and ask them every question that you can. But I do think that, like, before the workplace benefits conversation, you got to really have a basic handle on your budgeting, like your banking, like where's your checking account, where's your savings account, Do you have a good checking account or one that keeps on hitting you with fees and taking money out your account? If so, you need to change that. And do you have a savings account that really gives you a high interest rate? If they don't give you high interest in your savings, go somewhere else that gives you higher interest, because it's 2024, 2025 and beyond. Like, there's no reason for us to be accepting little interest when there are banks out there offering very high interest. So I think once you get the right banking institutions, or perhaps even like a credit union, if that's your thing, like, you got to set that up right. And then if you have any debt, for me, I think that is like, it's the second most important thing, because everything that you're accumulating debt on, if you're not paying it down and taking it seriously, you're eating away at your own wealth. Like, it's basically like you have a giant bucket of water and that's your wealth, and you keep on pouring water inside, but then there's a big hole on the bottom, and that hole in the bottom is the debt. So you thinking that you're adding money to your wealth, you're making money, your paychecks are coming in, and the hole in the bottom is pouring out money. So you're never really going to be able to fill up that bucket and build wealth as long as you have a lot of debt. So I'm talking about car loans, credit cards, personal loans, student loans. A home mortgage is a little bit different because that has a 30 or 15-year term. So there's already a payment schedule set up for you, and you'll be able to be done by that time. But when it comes to car loans, credit cards, personal loans, they will put you with the highest interest rate they possibly can based on your credit score. And they want you to take your sweet time making payments so you could be in debt longer. So it's up to you to try to be aggressive with that debt and pay more than what they charge you. Pay more than the minimum on your credit card. Pay more than the minimum on your car loan. Try to get rid of those debts, and that frees up money in your budget every month that you could then begin to invest. Now, that's where you come in with the 403B and all this stuff, because those workplace retirement plans, like, they basically allow you to buy stocks from the stock market inside of your 403B with money from your paycheck before your paycheck even gets taxed. That's a really good perk. Like, if you could get that perk, that's amazing. But I don't think it's as important to do it if you don't have like at least a basic understanding. At the end of the day, actually, I take that back, because I do think that even if you don't really know what's going on, at least sign up, because you're putting money in and it's going to start growing, and then eventually you can learn about it. But I think the problem is that too many people, they don't know, and so then they stay away. They don't sign up, they don't participate, they don't take advantage, because they feel like, I don't know, enough details about this, or like, I don't really know what this is about. Sign up, take advantage, and then start calling the numbers and asking them every question you have so you can learn. This is really, like, to me, the ticket out of generational poverty. Like, if we've been in poverty generation to generation, nothing's going to change until you change something.
Right.
So you got to be the one to like actually start to understand, what's in that 403B, and what are my options, and what does this mean? And it only takes maybe, I would say, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of your whole life to understand it. And once you know it forever.
What if you have like some like a little understanding of a 403B, 401k, and you actually like do the research and see what's in the fund, and you you kind of see that the fund is trash. What can you do?
Every 403B plan, every retirement plan, period, is like a restaurant menu. You go sit down in a restaurant, right? If you look at the menu and you see something that you don't like, you're gonna leave the restaurant. No, you're gonna order something different that you do like, right? So like, if you look into your 403B plan and you look at the funds that you have your money invested in and you don't like them, go and look at what other funds are available in the plan. There's a long list of different funds to choose from. You want to look at a fund that has a well-diversified amount of investments inside. So don't just look for a fund that only has, maybe 20 or 30 companies. You want to have hundreds of companies, if not thousands, because you want to represent like technology, healthcare, real estate, consumer staples, all the different sectors in the stock market. You want to try to touch a little bit of all of them so that you can really benefit from the growth of the businesses in America. And the second thing you really got to make sure that the fund has is a very low cost. You don't want to be paying high costs for these stuff, because then what happens is over time, over the years, even if you make a lot of profit or a lot of return, they're taking away money that you have to pay for the cost of having that fund. So the lower the cost of the fund, the less money they take away when you make profits and returns, and the more you get to keep to really grow it in the account. So I would say look for a fund in your 403B plan that is well diversified, so has lots of different companies from lots of different industries and sectors, and also that has a very cheap price. Now, the cost is tricky because they don't call it the cost of the fund. If they called it cost of the fund, that would make this so easy, right? But they don't. They call it expense ratio. So you just want to look at your funds inside of your retirement plan and look at the expense ratio. And if it's anything higher than 0.4, to me personally, that's way too high. I like all my expense ratios on all my investment funds to be below 0.4. Very close to zero is even better. So 0.04 is way better than 0.4. Right. So I like to look for things that are 0.0 and then a number like 0.08, 0.04, 0.03. Those are the best low cost because it's close to zero. You're paying nothing, like peanuts, right? And then that allows you to keep most of the money that you make from the fund over time. And if you look at the menu, if you look at all the funds inside of the 403B plan, and they all have fees that are like 0.75, 0.1, 1.5, 2.0. Oh my God, that freaks me out that somebody out there is paying 2%. It's crazy. But if you see high numbers like that, then at that point, I would probably just focus my attention on my own investment account, like a Roth IRA, or even a traditional IRA. These are investment accounts that you can open by yourself online. You don't need to do it through your job. But doing it through your job is always better first because they give you the tax perks, right? Like they take the money out before you get taxed. You can't really do that when you invest by yourself because the company takes the taxes out. So that's why I like start with the company policy, the 403B. But if it's trash because the expense ratios are high as hell, then you don't see nothing with a low cost, like a nice index fund that has like 0.0 something, then that's when I would say your whole plan is trash. That means the restaurant is trash. Every item on the menu sucks. That's when you do want to get up and leave and go to a restaurant that at least has one good thing on the menu that you want to buy. So to me, that's the approach I would take. And honestly, I think every 403B plan at least got to have like one good fund in it, at least one good low cost fund. So just really do the research, click on every single fund and look at the details until you find one with the low expense ratio.
No, that's great info and a simple way to put it. A restaurant menu, I like that.
Oh.
But somebody who's a proud job hopper like me, not necessarily by choice, but you gotta do what you gotta do, especially you got kids to support.
Yep.
Um, and you got an old 403B plan or a old 401k at a previous job that like how do you roll that over if you decide to roll it over because the stock market has been on fire like for the last year and a half. So
Yep.
she let it sit or roll it over. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so you know how basically like the company that you work for is the one that hired the investment company to give you a 403B, right? So as soon as you leave that job, you're not in that network no more. You don't work in that company anymore. And so you're not really a customer of them anymore. You left the job. So now if you do leave, they're going to be charging you fees every month in that account because they're holding your money and they're managing it for you in that 403B plan, but you don't work anymore for the company. So now they're going to charge you. So instead of paying every month to have a company manage the money where you're not even working at that company anymore, I would say you should do a rollover, like you said. Rollover means that you just keep all your money with you where you're going, right? So if you're going to a new company, you could roll it over into your new company's 403B plan or into your new company's 401k plan. If you have 401k money, put it in the 401k. If you have 403B money, put it in the new 403B. And if you don't have a new job yet, if you're really like doing your own side hustles and doing things in the meantime so you find a new job, then you could roll it over into your own individual retirement account, which is the IRA that I mentioned earlier. You could do a traditional IRA or you could do a Roth IRA. I would only put it in a Roth IRA if it was already Roth. So like Roth money stays with Roth accounts. Traditional money stays in traditional accounts. So if you had a 403B and you don't have the word Roth in front of it, then that means it's a traditional 403B. So you want to put that in a traditional IRA, always match them. If you had a Roth 403B, which is very rare, but it's a great account, then take that Roth 403B money, roll it over into a Roth IRA to keep the Roth with the Roth. And then the beautiful thing about that is you could log into your IRA anytime you want, change the selection, move the money around, buy and sell, whatever you want. And because it's in an IRA, it's in a tax advantaged retirement account, you don't got to worry about the tax implications of, making trades in there if you wanted to. I don't even make trades. I'm not going to lie to you. I just buy more and hold, buy and hold, buy and hold. Because that's for retirement. Like when I'm retired, that's why I'm gonna start taking it out so I could pay my bills when I'm not working. But the point is you got control. You are the one that have the control over the account. Now, if you leave it with the 403B from the old employer, you don't got that kind of control. They control it. So you would have to, it's like not easy for you to even log in, access it, and change investments. And plus, you only can change it to the things on their menu. Remember, that 403B plan is like a restaurant menu. So if you don't like any of the funds they have, then you're kind of stuck. But if you move it to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, there's no menu. Like you could get anything in the world that you want to eat. Like you could get any investment in from the stock market that you want. You don't have to just pick funds that they picked for you. You can buy anything. You type into the search what you want to buy, any stock, any fund, and any bond, whatever you want to buy, and it will be there. So that's why I like IRAs, because you get more control. You get to take your money with you, and it's free to open an IRA. You don't have to pay nothing to open an IRA. You just literally do it online for free. And then the rollover process is a little annoying because you kind of got to be on the phone with them and tell them, look, I want to move this, I want to roll it over. But actually, I'm gonna put you on to a company that will do it for you for free. It's called Capitalize. So you could go, their website is highcapitalize.com. Hi, the word capital with IZE at the end. Highcapitalize.com will take whatever 401ks or 403bs that you used to have, and they will roll it over to an IRA for you. And you get to pick from the options they have. They got Fidelity IRAs, Charles Schwab IRAs. They got a bunch of different really good investment firms on there that you can open your IRA with. So if you don't want to deal with the headache of being on the phone and moving the money, Capitalize will do it for you for free.
Oh, that's a gem right there. I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
As a fellow author, what was your process for writing the book? What made you decide to write the book? Tell us about your story. Kind of like a brief, what we call a psychosocial.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's so funny. I think for me, I never ever thought I wanted to be a writer, because every time I had to write stuff, I was like rolling my eyes, like, oh God, it's such a chore. Like it's like I have a lot that I want to say, but I don't want to write it. I just want to talk. I like talking a lot. Like I was always that talkative kid in the class, and my teacher always used to tell my mom in the parent teacher conference that this little girl don't know how to shut up. She's always talking with her friends in class. Like she's a problem. Like she's too chatty, she's too talkative, right? But now I teach for a living. I do presentations, I'm a speaker. And so it's like funny because those skills that like when you're little, you can see that how they flourish later in your life. But I just love talking. I love presenting. I love even reading. I love reading too, but I just don't like writing. I don't know, like I be in my head sometimes about, did I phrase that correctly? Is the grammar proper? What if I can, is it something different that I could do, better word choice, or should I structure the sentence differently? And, for me, I get in my head and I'm so critical that like, I don't think my writing is really, really strong. So because of that, what I did was I put a Google Doc open on my Gmail, like my Google Drive. I went and I opened a blank document and I put like voice type. And I just said like, all right, I want to tell the story about growing up, memories that I had. I want people to understand banking. I just started talking, and it was typing everything that I was saying. And then I would go back in after I had it on the page, and I would start like editing it and revising it and like beefing it up, adding details and things. And it was so helpful that like I had something on the page to start with, instead of looking at a blank document and being like, oh, I hate writing. I don't even know to write. I don't know how to fill this page up. And I don't feel confident what I gotta and how I write. So my best tip, anybody out there, if you don't like writing like me, don't feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to be an author or writer because I'm not good at writing. Use technology, okay? You use voice type, or you can even make voice notes on your phone. You could record them and then you could transcribe them with AI. They got all these AI tools that will take your video or your audio documents, or like, I guess, files, and they will transcribe it into text for you. So use the bots, use the AI, use the tools so that you can still enjoy the process and feel like you are getting your story or your message out to the world without feeling like you gotta go through the rigmarole of like writing and editing and go and everything from scratch. Because the problem is that you don't have to start from scratch. You can put something down and then work from there.
Well, regarding your story in terms of the book, how, the financial piece, like what triggered you made you want to write about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was making videos on YouTube starting back in 2015. Like I had paid off $20,000 of credit card debt that I took on when I was like 18, 19, 20, 21. I didn't know anything about credit cards. I didn't know anything about interest. I didn't know anything about debt. I never had anybody teaching me anything like this. So I was just like, you know what, this is kind of crazy because like I am a person who was always good in school. Like academics were my strength. And so for me to go from a kid who was always an A+ kid to then get to a point where I'm like, I don't understand something so basic like money management. Like who, like somewhere along the way, who dropped the ball and didn't teach me that? Like, and everybody has an opinion, like, oh, your parents are supposed to teach you that, your job is supposed to teach you that, your first job, or you're supposed to teach yourself, or school system is supposed to teach you that. Everybody has an opinion. But the point is, we have to figure it out quick, because if not, every single generation after generation after generation is going to keep making all the same money mistakes and saying, why didn't nobody teach me? Like, let's stop saying why and let's just figure out who's going to teach it. And then nobody can say, why didn't nobody teach me anymore? Because they will have learned it. So for me, that was like my motivation. I was like, I wish that I had the financial literacy knowledge when I was in my 20s that I have today in my 30s. So let me like write what I wish I knew and give it to as many people as possible. The best way to do that is either videos on social media, because they go, viral, or writing a book, because even when you die and you're long gone, you leave a book behind. That's a legacy for many generations to come, to be able to read that book. People nowadays, they be reading books from like way back in the Don Quixote is such a popular book. That book was written, like so you write a book, like it can really last over the test of time in a way that you physically, you just can't. So that motivated me to like leave everything that I wanted to leave behind and put it in a book.
I, I love how you first started the book about the face to face, the welfare story.
The Fetch Fe, oh my God.
Because it's true. Like I remember going to my mom's appointments for the getting the food stamps, and
Yep.
back
Yep.
back in the day where you actually got the food stamp coupon book and
The coupon book. Yep. That was the old school ones. And then they gave you the EBT card.
so yeah, so I would go to the welfare office on 161st in the Bronx, and kind of play with the other kids while mom handled her business, and did whatever. I guess that was like my first real introduction as a caseworker, social worker, did without realizing it
Yeah.
was those appointments. And I would hear mom be like, I got a face to face appointment. It'd be like, now it's called HRA in New York, or
Yep.
like Division of
And
Social
food stamps are called SNAP now.
I'm here in Delaware, and get SNAP and food stamps and
Yeah.
all the stuff that usually gets cut.
Mm-hmm.
Social workers got to navigate with our
That's
clients
right.
when they
Yep.
complain why my food stamps get cut. So
Yeah, that's a good point. You know why I wanted to start with that, because I wanted, like, right off the bat, you open my book, you're gonna know who I am and where I come from. You're gonna like, there's so many books about money out there written by stuffy old white people, white dudes or white old women, and their stories, they don't feel relatable, especially not to kids like us. Like, we grew up in the hood in New York City. Like, come on, we don't really see people like us telling those types of stories, or writing those types of books, or even being put in positions of leadership or power in the industries like finance or investing or money management. So I wanted to make sure that people knew, like, obviously it's a book and it was published, so there's like it's an official element to it, like, oh, it's official, it's a real book. But as soon as you open it, I want you to know the author is somebody who really came from a place where usually authors of these type of books don't come from. So there's going to be something different about this book. Just off of you reading the first page, you're going to know that. And I also am the type of person that when I read books, I skip the introduction. Always. Every time I pick up a book, I'm like, skip, 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 skip. I go straight to chapter 1. I don't want to waste time on the introduction. I want to get into the book. Like, I bought this book because I want to read it. I don't want, a whole bunch of introduction stuff. So I decided that when you open my book, the first thing you're gonna see is chapter 1. You're not gonna see no introduction. I'm not wasting no time. Let's get to it. Like, I'm gonna give you exactly what you need and why you picked up this book is about money. It's not about some long introduction. So those are the two things that for me motivated me to like create that first chapter in a way where like it's going to hook you and you're also going to know about me. And I decided the best way to do that is go back to my childhood and pick a story. And what better story than to pick the earliest thing you could ever think of in your life that related to like you figuring out money was part of your life in some way. I don't really remember like kindergarten or like I don't know, even like maybe first grade, but I start remembering things in my life from like the second and the third grade. Those are the memories that like, oh, I do remember that. I remember what I said. I remember how kids looked in my class and things like that. So the story in there was from basically when I was like in upper grades in elementary school. And my sister was just mad. She was mad at me because I yelled out on the backyard, like, oh, mommy went to a welfare appointment. And she was older. She was like 16. So for her, she already was embarrassed about like us being poor. And I wrote it in the book where I said, like, it's funny now to me as I look back because I'm like, girl, why are you mad? Everybody in this block, everybody in our neighborhood was poor and was on food stamps and was in a free and reduced lunch program at the school. And we was all lining up for free presents at the church every year for Christmas time. Like we were all in the struggle together. So I don't know why she was so mad, but I guess she felt like I was putting our business on blast. So when I came in the house, she knocked me on my head and she was like, you stupid. Why you telling everybody stupid? Like, you telling everybody that mommy's on welfare. And that just, it has always stuck with me. That memory of like, why was she so mad that I said welfare in the back? That I yelled it, like, what was such a big deal about it? And so yeah, for me, I just was like, you know what? I want to start with that story. It's going to tell you who I am, where I'm from, what kind of different type of author I'm going to be when it comes to learning about money. And I think it's just funny. It's a great story for like old school New York, growing up, in New York and that kind of energy.
No, and it's, for me it was so relatable because I remember being on that line with getting that government cheese and that block of butter and the like everybody hates Chris when it said the cereal box says cereal and that's what it said
Yes.
with the USDA stamp behind it. So yeah, so I lived that life and even like during COVID, during 2020, like all the kids who registered in public school got an EBT card and
Yeah.
that was to use. Uh,
Yes.
and right before like I moved, like I got cards for each of my kids. So for money management, I used the cards in Delaware because the price of the food was cheaper and just
Yep.
drove back up with the food
Yep.
instead
Yep.
of instead of the food was getting expensive in New York. And I'm
Yep.
go to Delaware,
Smart.
get a cooler, put it in the car,
Yep.
and job we
Bring
drive.
that food back up. Listen, I think that like one of the biggest things that I complain about nowadays to people, and I put it in my book too, that like we are so comfortable. We like convenience, it's like a silent killer. Like you pay more for everything to be convenient. Like you drove to Delaware, bought cheaper food and drove it back up to save money. That to me, that's a classic example of somebody that's serious about being financially savvy. Like you willing to go further away, even though there's a place right there to buy food because you recognize how different the prices are. But the way that some people are today, everything is too convenient. Like you got Apple Pay, you could tap your Apple Watch, you tap your phone, and boom, you pay. And so because everything's so convenient, I want to go somewhere. Back in the day, you had to call the taxi base and you had to wait for the taxi to come. Now, Uber, click, boom, car's here in 3 minutes. Like we're so like we're basically like to the point where we're at the mercy of like we don't want to wait. We are so impatient and like we just everything we want it to be as convenient as possible. Everything delivered to my house. I want it Amazon instant buy. I want it to arrive today. Like it's just getting to a point where we got to go back to how we used to be a little bit and be willing to have a little bit of like sacrifice in your life so you can be better off financially.
No, I totally agree with that. Like I still got that old school image. Every once in a blue, like yeah, I'll pay for the convenience as convenience. That's what
Mhm.
cost that price. So like, all right,
Yeah. I was
uh,
saying this to my boyfriend literally the other day, but we moved from New York to Miami and everything here is a little bit cheaper than in New York. And also the state of Florida does not have any income tax at the state level. So just moving from New York to Miami, literally my paycheck from one month to the next was 16% higher.
mm,
Like that's crazy. Some people were just desperate to get like 2 or 3% raise or 4% raise. I saw 16% more money from moving from New York to Florida. And I started noticing that I got a little comfortable with that. I'm like, okay, well, I got a little more money than I had when I lived in New York. So I'm doing, like Deliveroo, Grubhub, and this and that when I didn't feel like cooking or this and that. And I had to call myself out and I talked to my boyfriend about it. And I was like, we got to be careful with this because there's a whole term for that, which is lifestyle creep when you get a little bit more money and so you do a little bit more convenience, a little bit more spending, a little bit more, whatever, and you never do a little bit more saving.
right.
Never do a little bit more saving. So it's very important to constantly go back to the drawing board when it comes to your money situation. Go back and look at am I saving as much as I can? Am I on track with my retirement contributions? Am I at the right banks? Is my credit card paid off? Is my credit score high? It's like you got to do these checkups just like with the doctor, right? Like we got to be doing our financial checkups because even somebody like me who works in financial literacy and who has a platform about personal finance and wrote a book about money management, even me, it be catching me like because it's a psychological thing. So we just have to remember to check ourselves.
No, absolutely. Like you said earlier, there's a lot of different factors why like money wasn't taught. One, like Latino households, two things we don't talk about, like death and money. So it's like
Yep.
the way it happens.
Yep.
Or
That's very true. People
household.
just do, people don't like the uncomfortable topics.
So yeah, and my dad was always about put the money in the bank, and I'm like okay, like that's and mom mom was good about credit, like you gotta have a good credit score, like okay, but I never like why, like it was never really
Yeah.
explained to me why. She just knew like just gotta have good credit. But I was always afraid to get a credit card. Like nah, like I went all through 4 years of college. Like no, like I'm not. I walked right past the table. Like no, I'm not. I'm not signing up.
Okay. They got me. They definitely got me.
So I remember my first wife, and she wasn't that financially savvy, and she got me into getting a car, multiple cards, and it went downhill, downhill from there.
Yeah. You gotta definitely learn how to. It's funny because like I see it as like a game. They created this game with these very specific rules, and everybody's playing the game, but you don't know they are playing the game, right? So basically, you just gotta pause real quick, learn the rules, and then you can actually play the game correctly and or even potentially win at the game because now you understand the rules. Like if I'm gonna sit down at the table to play Monopoly with everybody, I don't even know how it works. I'm definitely not gonna win. They're gonna wipe me, like they're gonna build all the little hotels in the house and everything. I'm gonna be like, what you doing? Why are you doing that? I'm not gonna understand. So you have to sit and read and learn the rules first, and then you're gonna be a better player. And I feel like with credit, that is exactly what it is. There's a game that has been designed with lending and borrowing and you get points, right? It's your credit score is basically a number of points that you get. And there's things you can do to get more points, and there's things that you do that can take away points. So learn the game, learn the rules, and then you'll be able to do the things that the rules tells you gives you more points because it benefits you, right? But the reality is, if you don't know the rules of the game, you're not gonna be able to play to win. You'll lose, and you also have to know that you're playing a game. So in your case, you avoided the credit cards. Your gut was telling you, there's something there, right? That I don't, which is a good instinct. But then the mistake was you got the credit cards, you started doing it, and you didn't learn the rules. So I mean, me personally, I don't think credit cards are bad. I use them every single month, like I use them for everything. But I also every single month pay it down to zero. I never ever let $1 go past the due date. I pay every single month down to $0. So I have excellent credit and I never pay interest fees on my credit cards. But back in the day when I had my credit cards for the first time, I used to just pay the minimum balance on the credit card and get about what I, I only pay the minimum. That's all they're requiring me to pay. So that's all I'm gonna do. And the reality is that's how it eats away at you, because the interest just keeps growing and growing and growing. And you think you paid $100 for those sneakers with the credit card, but you end up paying 120 because the 20% interest annually. So you really just have to be serious about learning the game and then playing it, rather than playing the game, but you don't know the rules.
No, I like that. That's definitely good info. Um, so let's just use me for example. I feel like I'm kind of like late in the game. I'm trying to figure things out. I'll be 45 in September, and married with two kids, and like I'm just 2020, like kind of everything, you know, the financial literacy explosion kind of happened like late 2019
Yeah.
into 2020. Everybody talking about financial literacy, kind of starting like dabbling in the stock market for the first time. Finally decided to put some money in a 401k,
Yes.
IRA account. Moved out of New York, the pandemic, and buying a house, and like that whole experience is just seeing it online, but experiencing how hot the market is was like really like fascinating to
Yeah.
see and experience it in real time. And just kind of like I mentioned earlier, kind of like, all right, we figure out how to like save and put money in. Shout out to Ally, put money in
I
at
love Ally.
the same time. Pay bills and like mortgage and buying stuff for the house, and you become your own like landlord. Things fall apart. Like you gotta hire somebody that costs money, and inflation and everything. Kids need stuff, and they growing, and clothes and shoes and everything. Like somebody who's a Gen Xer or an older millennial, then they kind of feel like in the same boat. What can they do to kind of like feel like quicker to I'm closer to retirement than like I got like 10 good years in me as a social worker. Like kind of like what can somebody like myself do to like kind of like get that to that fire retirement status?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is really get serious about when you're going to set the goal of retiring. Because I think a lot of people think retirement, they just think it's like, oh yeah, something in the future that like someday, like, no, what's the day? What's the year? Like, it's just like, be specific. Your birthday every year, when's going to be your retirement day and what year? Like, be specific with it, because then you really are going to be motivated to kind of reach that day, and you're going to be like, all right, what do I got to do to get to that day and actually stop working, put in my 2 weeks notice and retire? Like, you're going to be more serious about it because you have a date rather than this big idea in your head of retirement. So I think that, map it out. Is it going to be another 10 years? Is it going to be another 12? Is it going to be 9 years? Is it going to be 14 years? And you can play around with an compound interest calculator and play around with the numbers to see which of those would actually makes you feel comfortable. So look at what's in your 403b, and let's say it grows on average about 8 or 9% per year for the next 15 years. Take that whole amount that you have in your 403b and put it into a compound interest calculator, the number, and then put 8% per year, and hit calculate, and then see how much it would grow to in 8 years with an 8% interest, or in 15 years with a 9% interest. Play around with all the different numbers, and then go like, okay, now I feel like I have an idea of how much money I'm going to have and what day I plan to have that amount. I can see if it's realistic, because the market generally does about 8 or 9% per year on average. So using those numbers is a fairly realistic estimate. So now you have a number of amount of money that you expect to have and a specific retirement date. If that number still feels a little too low for you, like, dang, I think I'm going to need more money than that, because retirement, it means I'm literally not going to be bringing in any new income, and I still have to pay all the things that I pay for now. So at that point, you're going to have to figure out, do I need to start doing something for extra income right now? And I would recommend yes, especially if you got 2 kids, that's 2 extra incomes. So your kids need to become kidpreneurs, which means that they're entrepreneurs, but they just happen to be kids, okay? They can have little hustles of their own. And it's also really great because they build a lot of skills when they're making money in creative ways. There's so many things that these kids are doing nowadays to make money. And then you also are doing, anything on the side that can allow you to kind of make extra money. That all kind of can go towards retirement as well. So it's faster and easier and less stressful if you have more money coming in, right? But at the end of the day, I do think that a lot of people, they just keep saying like retirement. But like for me, I know that I want to be retired by the time I'm in my early 40s. So I'm 33 right now. So that means in the 7 to 10 years, I need to have enough money to be able to retire. So that's very specific versus somebody just saying, oh, retirement. So I would say compound interest calculator is your best friend. So you can play around with the numbers and see, well, is 15 years realistic or am I going to have to do 18 years, right? So I can actually hit the number that I feel like I need. And then if you're not sure, like the numbers, in my book at the last chapter or second to last chapter, I talk about how much am I going to need to retire and use the 25X rule for that. So you could say, all right, in my retirement, let's say I want to spend like 50K a year, basically replace my 50K a year job or 60K a year job, where I'm going to take that amount and I'm going to multiply it by 25. And then that number is where you have to actually have total in order to completely leave your job and retire fully. Now, you also have to remember, if you don't have that exact same number in your 403B or your 401k, or even with your investments separate from that, it's okay because there's also some Social Security benefits that you're going to be entitled to as well. So, but those won't kick in until you're probably at least 62. So you want to like calculate that as well. And the easiest way to do that is to go to My Social Security, which is on the like the website for Social Security.gov. Go to that government site and there's an easy calculator that you can use to find out based on how much you have gotten in your life. Because the IRS, they have everything on file. They know every penny that you've earned, every penny in taxes that you've paid. So they just run the numbers based on your name and your Social Security number, and they spit out exactly how much Social Security income you should expect to get per check if you start retirement at 62, or if you wait till 65, or if you wait till 67. And you could click the different ages to see, oh, if I start at 62, I'm gonna get $1,200 a month. If I wait till 65 to retire, I'm gonna get $1,500 a month. But if I wait until 67 to retire, I'm gonna get $1,800 a month. So you decide, do you just wanna retire and just start taking your 1,200, or do you wanna wait to get that 1,800? So the more knowledge that you have, the more numbers that you have that are specific, the more you start seeing like a fuller picture of the reality of the day you want to retire, rather than the idea of retirement and the idea of what your life would be like. You want to stop doing the idea and you want to get really specific. And then, no, of course, it might vary a little bit, but at least you have some numbers to start with for your planning. And I kind of have done all these things. Like I have my 401k contributions, I have my Roth IRA. I would also recommend opening a Roth IRA because that's a really great vehicle to be able to take money out, even if you're not 59 and a half. So a lot of people say, oh, but like, what if I want to retire before 59 and a half? Okay, well, then you can't really take money out your 403B or your 401k till you're 59 and a half. So if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you want to retire a little early, the Roth is great. It gives you flexibility for that. But the other reason it's great is because if you are feeling like you're not going to hit your goal, you can increase your contributions to your 403B and also add money into a Roth IRA. So now you're like, you got more money working for you. So I've done all of these things. I have the 401k, I have the Roth IRA, and I also use the Social Security tool to calculate how much I'm expecting to get each month in Social Security benefits. And I've also used the compound interest calculator to project out, if I retire in 7 years, if I retire in 9 years, if I retire in 10 or 12 years, what would that look like based on the average market performance, and like which one do I feel like most comfortable with.
So, Social Security 2034, the money's gonna run out. Is that a myth? Or I've been seeing...
It's a partial myth. So the way that the Social Security Administration actually uses money to pay you Social Security, it comes from 2 places. One of them is a fund, a trust fund that is basically the government, every year, the budget, they put money into the trust fund. But because we keep on taking it out for other things, the trust fund is gonna be gone by 2034, they say, or 2054, something like that, right? So, but that trust fund is only 25% of the money that pays for Social Security income each month in your check. The other 75%, which is 3/4 of the money that you're gonna get in Social Security income, it comes directly from FICA, which is, you probably seen that on your pay stub, that's payroll taxes. It pays for two things, Social Security and Medicare. So if there are American workers working, paying FICA taxes, 75% of your Social Security benefit is solid. Even if the trust fund runs out, you will only get 25% less of what you expected, but you will still get 3/4 of the money that you see when you do your estimates. So when people say, oh, it's not going to be no money left, what they should be saying, to be accurate, is you're probably going to get 25% less of money. So when you're doing your calculations, don't be overestimating and thinking that you're going to get 1,800, because you got to make sure you take off 25% off of that, because the trust funds might run out. But the payroll taxes, I'm not the type of person who's a conspiracy theorist. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe that like in 2054, there's going to be no American workers. Like, what you mean? America runs not on Dunkin', it runs on the economy, the workers, the people working in all these businesses, right? The Amazon workers, the healthcare workers, the business people, right? We all go to work, that we all pay taxes into the payroll tax system, which is FICA. So we should be okay when it comes to Social Security. The worst case scenario, you get 3/4 of what you thought you were going to get, and that's not terrible.
That's why how dumb Orange Man talking about trying to cut the payroll tax. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
If you cut the payroll tax, you're screwing over everybody who benefits from Social Security benefits in old age, and also Medicare, which is a huge program for this country. My parents are on Medicare right now. Like I can't even imagine that you would get rid of that, because then how in the world are you going to pay for these social programs? And it's very selfish of people to say, oh, I don't care, because you're not experiencing it yet. But when you meet somebody who's in that, you got to have a little more compassion, because I didn't really care about Medicare until I started seeing my mom and dad signing up for it, and they need it. Like, literally yesterday I was on the phone with my dad. He was like, my teeth, my molars, like, I'm trying to sleep and I can't because there's so much pain. So I said, go to the dentist. He said, I did, but they said that the next appointment available, because of the Medicare coverage that he has, is not for another 2 weeks. So he's there sitting there in pain, waiting for a 2 weeks appointment. I said, why don't you just ask them how much it's going to cost in cash to take out the 2 molars? And if it's affordable, we'll just pay it in cash. I don't want you sleeping. I don't want you to be miserable for 2 whole weeks just because you're waiting for the Medicare appointment, instead of you just saying like, well, then I'll just pay cash. It ended up being that they were able to move his appointment up. So he's good now. But the problem is that people don't understand there are elderly people that depend on that. So for me, like, I think it was very eye-opening to help my parents through the whole retirement process, because now I got a lot more respect for elderly people. And I also have a lot more knowledge about how the retirement system works.
No, absolutely. Between Medicare and there's so many different, the Part A, Part B, and that's just medical. You got to get the Part D for the prescriptions. If you don't have Part
Yes.
D, then you're not
And
going
you're going to be paying cash when you go to the pharmacy. Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot, and there's Medicare Advantage plans. There's all this HMO stuff. I deal with it at work all the time. So especially
And
working.
imagine being 70 years old and you have to figure all of that like by yourself. So yeah, I just think we got to be more compassionate when it comes to the elderly population. It's one of my biggest pet peeves these days. Like, I feel like our society is moving to a place where we are finally like becoming a little bit more accepting of the things that are a little bit like not traditional. Back when I was growing up, everybody was homophobic. It was like, you make fun of, oh, that's gay, that's gay. Nowadays, we are much more LGBTQIA friendly. And even cultures, like nowadays, when I was growing up, people used to make fun of different accents and different languages. Now I feel like we're much more welcoming of all these different cultures, different foods, different languages. Duolingo, like everybody's trying to learn more languages. They're not trying to make fun of people that speak different languages. I think like as a culture, we have shifted, we improved, we're better and more, inclusive and more tolerant people. But except when it comes to older people, we complain that old people walk too slow, they drive too slow, they take too long in the grocery store in the line, like they, we just don't have no compassion for old people. And I do believe that, or I don't like saying old people, older people. And I feel like that's the one area where we're still like discriminating all the time, and it's like normal, it's like socially acceptable. So it's funny because I actually made a goal for myself to start at least once a year, at least having like a real, very deep conversation with somebody that I don't know who is over the age of 65. And that challenge, I recommend it to anybody out there listening. Like for real, it makes you more compassionate about older people. And like they're mad funny, like they're relatable. They have so much wisdom and jokes, and they don't have hair on their tongue. They say whatever they think, they say it because they've been alive a long time. So they just cut through the BS, and I really appreciate it. It's made me much more open-minded when it comes to an older population.
And being a caregiver of I take care of my dad, and it's not talked about enough how caregiving is so hard, and caregiving for my mom until she passed away. It's no joke, and managing their medicines and insurance is
I feel you. That's so
a lot.
true. It is a lot. It's true. But I always think of it like the system needs to improve, but we also as people individually need to be more compassionate, because if you're lucky, that will be you one day. If you're not lucky, you won't make it. So it's like, I see it as like a blessing to have older people around to give the wisdom out. That's where we all headed. So we might as well be more compassionate, and lean in and learn a little more about the experience and what we could expect.
You said FICA, and the 15-year-old in me got triggered when I saw that check and the summer youth check, and I saw FICA. I was like, what the heck is FICA?
Yo, who the hell is FICA? Who is she? And she better give me my money back. They giving my money to FICA. Let me get my money back. And I honestly, I believe that part of that is the problem of not including financial literacy in schools. Because if you teach basic taxes, I'm not talking about getting advanced tax with the tax laws, with the code. Like, no, I'm just saying basic tax stuff. Like, what is sales tax? Okay, what is income tax? What is a payroll tax? Let's look at a paycheck and look at the pay stub and see, this is your gross pay, this is your net pay because of the taxes and the deductions. Boom, that's it. That takes probably like 1 week to explain and to show the students. And that way, when they get their first check, they're not freaking out because they see FICA and think that somebody's taking their money. They actually had the expectations and they knew it was coming. So I just, for me, I feel like a lot of these problems that we face as adults, like we could have solved those if we just help students learn a little bit about what's about to come up in their life in 18 years old and older, but like do it before they're 18, so that while it's on the horizon, so they can be prepared for it.
No, absolutely, and it kind of, and like you said, it kind of goes back like to our generation where our parents and our grandparents now,
Yep.
Educating. Now we gotta like educate ourselves and do it quickly, and there's like so much good stuff out there, and you're doing amazing work. I've been following you for a while, and
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
the book, the book was.
Thank you. Yes, listen, if y'all interested in reading the book, we've been talking about it a lot, but it's at mindyourmoneybook.com. You can get a copy there. You can learn a little bit more about me and what I do. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Thrift Books, all the places that people get their books. But man, I poured my heart and soul into it, and I just, to me, it's like kind of like the gift that I wish I had gotten. So if there's somebody in your life who's a teenager, who's in college, maybe who just graduated college, or maybe who skipped college and just went straight to make money, but they never really understood money, this book, I think, is applicable for all of that. Like, I think it's a good book for anybody between like 18 and like 45, like even 50. I have people that are 50 that email me and said, thank you so much for your book. Like, you don't understand. I'm in my 40s and 50s, and reading your book has helped me. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Because when I was writing it, I'm constantly thinking about like the basics that a younger person might need. But the reality is we make it through life and nobody teaches us. So you can end up being a lot older without knowing these basics. So yeah, that was, I really, it's been such a blessing to get messages from people all over saying that the book has really helped them, and they're going back through it 2-3 times with a highlighter to really learn the things and apply them. I'm like, yes, this is
I was
amazing.
reading it again, like getting ready for today and interviewing, kind of like this time with the highlighter. I'm like, why ain't I like this the first time?
Yeah, that's good. That means it's a good book. A lot of facts and information. That's right.
That what one last question? What how is it like moving from New York to go to Florida, especially with that that other crazy man run running
You
that?
know, I was so scared to move to Florida because, growing up in New York City, everybody's very tolerant. It's very heavily democratic, like for the most part across the board in terms of like
Stand out.
local, except for Staten Island, because we know Staten Island be real red on the map. But for me, I grew up very tolerant, very progressive. I mean, well, that's a lie. In growing up in the hood, you have like especially because my parents are very religious and they're immigrants. So certain parts of my upbringing were actually very close-minded and a little, I would call it bigoted, honestly, the things that I used to believe and things that I used to say and the words that I used to use. But I didn't know any better, and that was my environment. That's all I saw and all I knew. But the moment I knew better, I, fixed my beliefs. I approached things with a new mindset, and I became a better person. I try very hard to like correct what I'm doing when I feel like it's not right. And so once I kind of became a little bit more independent as an adult, feel that I have been a very progressive person. I'm very tolerant, very accepting, very inviting. I don't care who you are, how you live your life, who you love, or where you want to be, or how you want to be. I accept you because you have a human heart beating in your chest just like mine, and that's what connects us. So I feel that I have this very progressive mindset, and moving to Florida, where it's extremely conservative, I was definitely nervous about it. But what I tell you, I am so glad that I did it, because it has made me learn so much and push me and challenge me. Because before, I'm not gonna lie to you, being in New York City and like just the way I was, I always had like politicians in my head, like caricatures. Like Republicans in my head, it was like there was a caricature of a Republican. I had never met a Republican person and spoke to them and hear their opinion and understand why they have the beliefs and they support the issues that they support. And being here, I have been around a lot more people that are very proud conservatives and proud Republicans. And I am having to converse with them and talk to them. Some of these people are my neighbors. Some of these people are the ones that work in the supermarket when they bag up my food, or when there's a lot of conservative Cubans in Miami where I live. And so it's very interesting because Cubans are very similar to Dominicans. My family is Dominican. It's a very there's a Latin connection there and a Caribbean Latin connection there. But I have been forced to try to understand their experience. I highly recommend that you all watch this documentary called Cuba and the Cameraman. I watched that documentary on Netflix, and let me tell you, I do not agree with a lot of their beliefs about politics and the government, but I damn sure do understand why they believe those things, because they have experienced serious trauma through what they experienced politically in Cuba under Fidel Castro. And a lot of us think we have no idea. And in that documentary, you get to witness the change of the island of Cuba from when everything was great and golden to when Russia backed out and stopped supporting Castro, and families were literally pulling twigs and leaves off the floor to eat something. And so if you grew up in an environment where your life has turned like that, people are stealing and just to eat. It's not that they're stealing because they are bad people. It's they're stealing somebody's pigs out their backyard and goats and chickens, because that's literally the only way they're going to eat a meal that they haven't eaten in a week or 2 weeks. And so when you see what they lived through and their grandparents lived through and their parents lived through, they associate all of those things happening because the government got too big. So when they think of big government, immediately they think of all the trauma that they have experienced. So moving here to Miami has taught me that they are not anti-democratic policies per se, they're anti-big government. and Democratic governors, Democratic senators and representatives and Democratic politicians in general tend to do things that align with bigger government. And so because of that, they look at that and say, oh, that's big government. No way I'm going to support that. I'm going to go over here that's far away from big government as possible, because I don't want anything to be even anywhere remotely close to the trauma that I experienced with the government getting too big.
Sense.
And I actually understand that now. And I don't think I ever would have had this perspective if I didn't go right in the middle of the people that were so different from me and actually talk to them. And like, that's the problem with, I think, the divisiveness in our country right now in general. We just have these big issues that we disagree on, but nobody is actually talking to anyone on the other side. The people who are against, trans rights, they don't know a single trans person. The people that are homophobic, they don't know a single gay person. So it's so interesting to me that, like, being against a lot of those conservative ideas and then talking to conservative people. Now, it doesn't mean that I agree with conservative ideas, but I'm so much more understanding. And I think at the end of the day, we all got to try to understand each other a little better. We don't got to agree on everything, but we got to treat each other with, some basic common human decency. So that, I think Miami has been fun. It has been interesting. The best benefit I got from moving to Florida and Miami was that, I would say. It has really changed my perspective.
That's a interesting take. I know a few people who moved to from New York to Miami, and I know a few people besides myself. After I moved, a few people moved out of New York to go to Georgia, different other places like that. So I know New York experienced a mass exodus from
Yes, it
COVID
did.
after you know, Cuomo and his disaster policies and
Yeah.
de
I
Blasio.
will say though, that the comments that I made are specific to the Cuban population in Miami. If
Gotcha.
you live in Texas or you live in Georgia, that is a level that I don't know that I understand yet, but I certainly do understand it when you are, Cuban or a refugee, and then you came to Miami, and then you align yourself with some more conservative and Republican ideologies. I understand. I do understand why that might happen.
Where can people find you?
Y'all can find me online at Miss Be Helpful. It's MISSBE and the word helpful, but only with one L, because people be misspelling that word left and right. I be seeing people type it with two L's. Helpful has one L, one L, people, okay? So it's MISSBE helpful with one L. Anywhere, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Like, if you type Miss Be Helpful, you'll find me on all these places. And if you want to get the book, it's mindyourmoneybook.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your busy schedule. And I hope everybody catches these gems because we need it, especially with our student loans and everything that's happening right now in our social work profession. And we got Agent Orange looming, being president again,
Right.
and
We need to
all these
keep an eye on this. We need to keep an eye on this environment right now and do everything we can, for sure. So yeah, if it feels like everything is kind of a mess right now, I would just say lean into your humanity, try really hard to understand what's going on, why people are doing what they're doing, saying what they're saying, and just try to better yourself as much as you can and be ready to show up and go vote.
exactly. On
Thank
that
you so
note,
much, Baz.